Level 1, the associate. You are 19. The back room of the Brooklyn Social Club is warmer than the street and quieter than it should be. The radiator bangs once in a while. Cups click against saucers. Espresso grounds sit damp in the tray beneath the machine. Someone is always smoking near the cracked window. Even when the room says no smoking in sun-faded letters, nobody obeys. You stand more than you sit. You pour coffee. You move cars before the meter runs out. You pick up sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. You carry messages so small they sound meaningless until you notice how carefully everyone watches them arrive. No one introduces you to the life. They let you orbit it. You are useful because you are young, because you are forgettable, because if police stop you with nothing in your pockets, you are only another kid in a burrow full of kids. That is the first truth. Not honor, not brotherhood, utility. You are close enough to smell the cigars and hear the laughter from the card table, but not close enough to belong to any of it. The formal membership at the center of this world has always been narrow. Federal investigators have long described a small core of made men surrounded by a much larger ring of associates who work for them, borrow from them, fear them, and hope through them. That means your position is older than you. The outer ring, the expendable ring. The ring that keeps the lights on while the names that matter stay clean. You tell yourself this is temporary. Everyone at your age tells himself that. Just errands, just introductions, just one room, one neighborhood, one set of men who happen to know how money moves. But even now, before anyone has promised you anything, the ladder is already there in the room with you. First you run, then you earn, then you learn how silence works, then the ceremony, then the book, then the crew, then the chair behind the crew, then the chair behind the chair. Then something past all of that, half title and half warning, a summit nobody defines aloud. Nobody tells you the price. They let you discover it one favor at a time. You are not inside the house yet. You are learning where the door is. Still level 1. Still the associate. Only now the errands start paying. At first it is a few slips folded into your shirt pocket, a few dollars that smell of cigarette smoke and hand lotion and deli counters. Then it becomes a route. The same storefronts every week. The barber who closes the shop door before speaking. The luncheonette owner who keeps a racing sheet folded under the till. The shoemaker whose window displays polished loafers while the real business sits in a ledger under the counter. You collect numbers, small bets, daily hope sold in 3 digits. The numbers game looks ordinary from the sidewalk because it borrows the shape of ordinary life. Men order coffee and hand over a slip. Women buy bread and whisper a number. Someone jokes about luck. Someone loses rent money. By the time you are trusted with the route, you understand why illegal lotteries lasted so long in American cities. They fit easily into the seams of the day. Histories of the racket describe exactly that. Street corner betting, neighborhood collection, tiny wagers multiplied into serious cash. Nothing about it feels cinematic while you are holding the envelope. It feels administrative, and then the envelope climbs. That movement is the education. Cash does not stop with you. It does not stop with the man who handed you the route. It keeps rising through hands that take their portion and pass the rest upward. Nobody gives you a lecture about hierarchy. The hierarchy is the direction the money travels. You learn it with your fingers before you learn it with language. A man on your route misses a payment, then misses another. You expect shouting. There is none. The older soldier simply asks the amount, writes it down, closes the notebook and moves on. That is when you understand the real system is not anger, it is memory. The debt stays alive even when the conversation ends. It follows the man into next week, next month, next season. In this world, forgiveness is less useful than accounting. You come home with more cash than anyone your age should touch. You also come home with other men's troubles in your jacket pocket. Money feels lighter than obligation until you have to carry both. Nothing disappears here. It only changes hands. Then the telephone changes shape. You notice it before anyone explains it. Men who used to talk freely indoors begin stepping outside to finish sentences. A name becomes a nickname. A nickname becomes a pronoun, a meeting becomes a cup of coffee, then a ride, then nothing at all. Whole subjects are compressed into glances. If a phrase comes too easily, it is the wrong phrase. If a sentence can stand on its own in a courtroom, it is not spoken. You think this is style at first. You are wrong. It is survival. In 1963, Joseph Valaki sat before a Senate committee and named La Cosa Nostra in public. He described the structure, the rules, the existence of a world powerful men had spent decades pretending was only rumor. Once that testimony entered the bloodstream of the country, secrecy was no longer just local habit. It became a defense against a government that finally had language for what it was hearing. The world you have joined was not made visible in one day, but one man on live television helped change the weather. So now you learn weather discipline. No full names on the phone. No real business in a room you do not control. No repeating yourself. No saying tomorrow when you can say later. No saying money when you can say things. Civilian speech wants clarity. Institutional speech wants distance. The strangest part is how quickly it becomes natural. You stop telling stories all the way through. You let them break in the middle. You leave half your meaning floating between people who have been trained to catch it. You discover that secrecy is not a dramatic pose. It is an accent acquired by repetition. One night a payphone rings while you are standing near it. Nobody answers. Everybody notices. That is how fear enters this life, not with sirens, with interruption. Silence is expensive, but speech costs more. Then one winter night the room changes around you. Level 2, the made man. You are dressed more carefully than you have ever dressed in your life, and the room still feels temporary, as if it could be packed away before dawn and denied by daylight. A basement, maybe the back of a funeral parlor, maybe a social club after the chairs have been stacked and the blinds drawn. Men you have known for years suddenly look formal, not because they are kinder, but because the ritual demands it. The ritual is not myth. Federal informants and later FBI recordings preserved its structure closely enough that the country now knows its outlines: the pricked finger, the blood, the holy card, the flame, the oath. When your finger is pierced, it hurts less than you expected. When the saint's image catches fire, it burns faster than you expected. You move it from palm to palm because you are told to, because everyone before you did, because the words you repeat are supposed to enter you through embarrassment as much as belief. If you betray the family, may your soul burn like this saint. It sounds older than America. It is. You have waited for this. Every associate waits for some version of this, whether or not he reaches it. A private naming, a private border crossed. The older men kiss both cheeks and call you by a phrase that means you are one of us now. Protected, recognized. No longer hanging off the edge of the table. Then the second truth arrives. Membership is not freedom. Membership is obligation with ceremony wrapped around it. From this night on, you are no longer a helper who can drift away. Your hours belong elsewhere before they belong to you. Your relationships are observed differently. Your mistakes count differently. The family can protect you, yes. It can also summon you. It can narrow your choices and call that honor. The thing you wanted as proof of arrival turns out to be the tightening of the knot. You thought the oath would make you safer. It makes you legible. A title can close just as firmly as it opens. Then you start earning like a man whose name now matters. Level 3, the soldato. The books were not always open. That matters, because it changes the feeling of the rank the moment you receive it. On November 14, 1957, the meeting at Appalachian was exposed when police descended on a gathering of major mob figures in upstate New York. Men ran through woods in dress shoes. Names that preferred shadow landed in headlines. The scrutiny that followed was so intense that new inductions slowed and, in some families, stopped for years. Entire classes of hopeful associates aged in the waiting room of the life. So when your name finally makes it through, you do not mistake it for routine. You know men who wanted this and never got it. You know men who stood one favor away for a decade and died unofficial. The ceremony gave you status. The waiting gave that status weight. Now you are entrusted with a real piece of business, a loan book, a gambling operation, a labor angle attached to a company whose front office looks cleaner than its books. There is money in it, real money. Rent disappears as a problem. So do winter coats, dental bills, and the quiet humiliation of pretending you cannot afford things. You begin to understand the seduction plainly. It is not just power people chase, it is relief. But relief comes tagged. You carry a pistol less often than people imagine, and exposure more often than they imagine. Your name now sits in files that are not neighborhood gossip but federal paperwork. Agents know your face from weddings, funerals, christenings, restaurant exits. Detectives learn your routines by learning the routines of the men around you. A no-show union job may put a legitimate check in your mailbox, but it also puts your name on a payroll that can one day be subpoenaed. Even your comforts produce a paper edge. For the first time, you have something to lose that is not only bodily. You have income, standing, status in rooms that once barely noticed you. And because you have that, you can now be squeezed in ways a kid on errands cannot. One pressure point replaces another. Promotion in this life does not reduce vulnerability, it refines it. The money gets cleaner on the way up. The danger does not. Then the crew comes. Level 4, the Capo. You no longer wake up thinking first about what you will do. You wake up thinking about what other men might have done while you were asleep. That is the rank. 10 soldiers, 20 associates, maybe more if business is good and discipline is bad. Their earnings rise through you. Their mistakes rise through you. Their little vanities, their grudges, their appetites for risk, their loose talk after midnight, their gambling, their girlfriends, their cousins with bad ideas, all of it eventually arrives at your table. Historically, the Capo regime exists for insulation as much as management. The structure of the 5 families, as described by investigators and former members alike, depends on layers, so the boss does not touch the street directly. You are now one of those layers. You are the man who turns instruction into motion and motion into distance. If something explodes below, your job is to make sure the blast dies before it reaches the top. There is status in that. There is also arithmetic. A soldier in your crew gets greedy, not spectacularly greedy. That would be simpler. He just starts shaving small amounts, holding back pieces of the envelope, assuming the regularity of the system will conceal him. That is the kind of theft that really matters here, not because of the amount, but because it insults the order of things. Every upward moving dollar is also a gesture of obedience. When he trims it, he is not only stealing cash, he is revising the chain of command in his own favor. If you have climbed this far with the story, stay. The next rooms are smaller and darker. You call him in. The room is quiet. No one performs anger. That is one of the most unsettling things about authority here. Once it is mature, it rarely raises its voice. You lay out the discrepancy. He lies once, then less convincingly, then not at all. He understands before you finish speaking that the real hearing is not about the money. It is about whether the crew still believes numbers mean what they are supposed to mean. From that day forward, everyone counts more carefully. Not because they fear pain in the abstract, but because they have watched procedure restore hierarchy. This is how leadership feels here. Not glory, not command music in the background, administrative dread, constant calibration. The knowledge that men call you powerful because they do not see the hours you spend cleaning up appetites too childish for the title they carry. At the street level, power looks like being obeyed. Inside the structure, power looks like being held responsible. You are no longer judged by what you earn. You are judged by what you can contain. Then they move you somewhere stranger. Level 5. The Consigliere. At first the loss is practical. No crew of your own. No direct stream of men bringing tribute to your table. No territory that feels like yours in the old, graspable sense. You sit closer to the center and own less than ever. The rank sounds ornamental to people outside the world because popular language has cheapened it. Inside the structure, it is colder than that. You are expected to advise without appetite, to hear disputes without sounding invested, to tell a capo he is wrong without humiliating him, to tell a boss he is drifting without making him defensive. Most men can command or flatter, few can arbitrate. That rarity is why the position exists. Evidence introduced around the commission case helped fix the public image of roles once treated as rumor, and among those roles the consigliere emerged not as a mascot or ceremonial elder, but as a genuine internal counselor, someone useful precisely because he stood outside the day-to-day greed of any one crew. That is the theory. The practice is lonelier. Now everyone brings you pieces of their conscience without naming it conscience. A soldier asks for judgment on an insult that could turn into blood if framed badly. A capo wants permission to read generosity as weakness. The boss wants to know whether a gesture from another family is peace or theater. Because you no longer have your own crew, people call you neutral. Neutrality sounds clean until you spend years carrying other men's dirt without the relief of action. This rank changes the texture of your knowledge. As a capo, you knew events. As consigliere, you know motives. You hear the first version and the revised version. You hear what men say in public and what they mutter after the room thins out. You learn how often disputes are not about money but about face, and how often face is just money wearing a better suit. Nothing you hold can be displayed. The chair gives you trust and removes possession. You become central by being abstract. You are listened to by men who would never let you touch the raw business that feeds them. To be trusted with everything and to own nothing is a peculiar kind of poverty. Wisdom is heavy because it cannot be set down. Then even the rooms disappear. Level 6. The Underboss. By now the street has receded so far that it arrives mostly as report, rumor, and delayed consequence. You no longer see half the men whose fortunes depend on your decisions. You receive them as names, percentages, complaints, corrections. A capo says a truck was delayed. Another says a union man is getting nervous. Someone else says a bookmaker vanished for 12 hours and reappeared with a weak explanation. You listen, sort, relay, withhold, protect. The day becomes filtration. The FBI's own family charts put the underboss exactly where you now sit, second in command, directly beneath the boss, directly above the capos, powerful precisely because information must cross your desk to gain altitude. That looks impressive from outside. From inside, it feels like living in a house where every pipe runs through one wall and any leak can drown you in your sleep. The structure is meant to protect the top by inserting layers. That means you are both shield and target. Orders pass down without descending all the way into the conduct they shape. Trouble climbs up without arriving in its original form. By the time a problem reaches you, it is often already edited by fear, loyalty, self-protection, and plain stupidity. You are constantly solving with incomplete information, which is another way of saying you are constantly gambling. Paranoia stops feeling psychological here. It becomes numerical. How many people heard that name? How many cars on the block you do not recognize? How many minutes late before late means something? How many words in a story before a story becomes rehearsed? One wrong estimate does not merely embarrass you. It can expose the boss, provoke another family, interest prosecutors, or end a life that will then need to be explained upward and downward at once. You once thought power meant proximity to action. Now you understand that the higher you go, the less direct contact you can afford. Distance is mandatory. Distance is also corrosive. Men beneath you begin to speak to your office more than to your face. By the time you hear about a betrayal, it has already been translated 3 times. By the time you hear about an opportunity, someone has already calculated how much of it to hide from you. You protect the center by living inside distortion. The street once seemed dangerous because it was visible. This layer is dangerous because it is not. Then the chair arrives. Level 7, the boss. There is no applause for the seat, just a new pattern of silence when you enter. Men watch your reactions more carefully now because your reactions travel. A pause from you becomes hesitation in another room. A shrug becomes permission somewhere else. A frown turns into panic 3 levels below by the next afternoon. You are no longer merely a man with judgment. You are an atmospheric condition. The law changed this job before you ever reached it. In 1970, Congress enacted RICO, giving federal prosecutors a way to target not only isolated crimes but the enterprise itself. That shift mattered more than any one raid. It meant the architecture that once protected leadership could now be presented as evidence of leadership. Then came the commission trial, United States v. Salerno, the mid-1980s case that convicted top mafia figures by arguing the structure was the offense, the coordination was the offense, the very system of insulated command was the offense, so you sit in the chair knowing the chair itself has become probative. Every decision now is exposure distributed outward. If you approve a move, someone else implements it and carries the immediate risk. If you refuse a move, someone else absorbs the resentment. If you delegate too little, you look exposed. If you delegate too much, you look weak. Prosecutors do not need you on a corner. They need your pattern, your relationships, your place in the enterprise. That is enough to build a case around a man who has spent years avoiding the crude errors of his youth. This is why the seat is hunted. Not because it is loud, but because it organizes. The modern state understands organization. It can chart it, narrate it to a jury, and convert distance into intent. You feel the irony every day. The higher this institution climbed in sophistication, the more the law learned to punish sophistication itself. The old image of the boss with his hands on everything is gone. In its place stands a subtler vulnerability, a man condemned for mastery of structure. You can end disputes with a sentence now. You can redirect streams of cash by changing who eats first. You can make grown men spend sleepless nights trying to interpret what you meant by one gesture over dinner. From below, this looks like absolute power. From inside, it feels like standing at the brightest point in a dark room, knowing every eye can find you even when nobody appears to be looking. Power does not hide you, it outlines you. Then there is the summit people say exists, even when they insist it does not. Boss of bosses. No one can really hand it to you. That is the first clue. There is no stable office for it, no ceremony agreed upon by all, no safe method of wearing it. The title survives in memory because men keep needing language for the fantasy of final superiority. But fantasy is dangerous when a real institution hears it spoken aloud. In 1931, after the Castellamaris War, Salvatore Maranzano declared himself Capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. He reorganized the New York families, imposed a shape, occupied the summit by announcement. Months later he was dead, assassinated in his office. The title did not become secure after his death. It became cautionary. The families moved toward the commission precisely because a faceless table was safer than a crowned man. A visible apex invites knives. That history matters because it reveals what the whole climb has been hiding from you. At 19, standing in the back of the club with coffee in your hand, you think the ladder leads upward toward certainty. Each rank appears to promise more solidity than the last. More title, more command, more insulation, more distance from the humiliations of being small. But the summit does not free you from dependence. It strips away the room that once disguised it. By the time you can plausibly be called above the others, you are not surrounded in the way young men imagine. You are narrowed. Every conversation is filtered. Every friendship is historical burden. Every courtesy may have a tactical edge. The lower ranks wanted something from you. The equal ranks measured themselves against you. The highest rank leaves you with people who either fear you, need you, study you, or wait. That is the withheld truth. The bottom and the top resemble each other more than either resembles the middle. At the bottom, you are alone because you do not matter yet. At the summit, you are alone because you matter too much for anything around you to stay simple. The room does not become yours. The room empties around the fact of you. You are not above the structure. You are the residue left when the structure has taken everything useful from the man inside it. The title is highest where the air is thinnest. Morning. No title. The club opens early and needs less from you than it once did. The espresso machine still hisses. The cups are still thick white porcelain, chipped at the base, warm in the hand. Light falls through the front window in a washed-out rectangle and stops just short of the back booth. A younger man unlocks the door, nods to you, and starts counting change into the register. He does not ask questions. That is the final mercy of old age in this world. Routine survives legend. You drink alone, not dramatically, just plainly. The neighborhood has changed. Cameras where there used to be payphones. New signs in old windows. Fewer men lingering in daylight. The institution that once needed a body in every chair has learned to need less visible bodies. It can persist without a boss standing in the room where the coffee is poured. You lift the cup. Bitter, familiar, almost gentle. And you understand, too late to use it, that the life was never the titles. It was the long trade of self for position, one rank at a time, until even the man who won could no longer tell which part of him had done the winning. The machine hisses again. Morning begins again. No one announces you. That is how the summit ends.